If your brain feels chaotic lately, or if it's always been that way, you're not alone. Maybe you feel scattered, overwhelmed, easily overstimulated, or like your thoughts are running 10 different marathons at the same time. And maybe, like so many of us, you've tried every planner, every hack, every fix. But what if the problem isn't your brain? What if the problem is that no one taught you a system that actually works for the kind of mind you have? Today, over this quiet moment together, I want to walk you through one of the most grounding frameworks I've ever used. The same one I share with my neurodivergent friends, the entrepreneurs, the creatives, the beautifully intense thinkers who often feel different. People like my friend Anna, who thought her ADHD made her unreliable until she learned how structure could feel like freedom. Or my friend Louise, whose autistic sensitivity became a superpower for spotting patterns in his business. Or my friend Carla, who always said her emotions were too much until she realized they were actually guiding her toward deeper clarity. There is nothing wrong with your brain. You just need a system built for how you work, not how you're told to work. So make yourself comfortable. Let your shoulders drop. And let's explore the one system that might finally make your brain work with you, not against you. So if you've ever felt like your brain is spinning in 100 directions at once, let's pause for a moment, breathe, and explore why your neurodivergent mind doesn't just survive, it thrives. Here's the first step in understanding how your unique wiring can actually be your greatest strength. Today, I want to talk to you like we're sitting together with a calm drink in our hands. No pressure, no performance. Just two humans trying to understand our minds a little better. Because if you've ever felt like your brain works differently, or you've struggled with focus, overwhelm, emotional intensity, or even feeling too much or not enough, you're not alone. And you're definitely not broken. In fact, many of the traits that make you feel out of place in traditional systems are the exact traits that help people thrive in entrepreneurship, creativity, and self-growth. But most of us were never taught that. Instead, we were taught to mask, to shrink, or to force our brains to work like everyone else's. So today's conversation is about something deeply important: understanding how neurodiverse traits, whether ADHD, autism spectrum tendencies, sensory sensitivity, emotional intensity, or nonlinear thinking, can become strengths, not despite how your brain works, but because of it. And we're also going to explore something even more meaningful: how to grow emotionally, spiritually, and professionally when your brain doesn't follow the standard rulebook. If you've ever felt like you were trying to use tools that weren't designed for you, this episode is for you. This is not a clinical conversation. This is a human one. It's inspired by the work of people like Dr. Edward Hallowell, Temple Grandin, Gabor Mate, Devin Price, and Jessica McCabe, people who dedicated their lives to understanding the kind of mind that society often mislabels. And don't worry, I'll link their books in the description, and buying through those links helps support the channel. But for now, I want you to take a breath, because everything we're going to talk about today belongs to you, your brain, your rhythm, your way of functioning. You don't need a diagnosis to relate to this. You don't need a label. You only need curiosity about your inner world and compassion for the parts of you that have been misunderstood. Let's begin at the root. Most neurodiverse people grew up with the constant feeling that their mind didn't fit. Maybe you were the creative daydreamer, the deeply focused problem solver, the highly sensitive observer, the restless visionary, or the emotionally intuitive one who felt everything intensely and deeply. But here's the truth that society rarely says out loud. These traits are often the very foundation of entrepreneurial success, They're also the foundation of emotional intelligence, but only when you stop fighting your brain and start working with it. And this is where the shift begins. Because self growth is not about becoming someone else, it's about becoming more yourself with better tools, better understanding, and better systems that support your natural rhythm. So, let me take you through something important. For many neurodiverse people, entrepreneurship feels easier than traditional jobs, not because the work is simple, but because they finally have the freedom to build systems around their strengths, not around the expectations of others, not around societal norms, and definitely not around the outdated idea that productivity means sitting still for hours at a time. But before we go deeper into entrepreneurial strength, we need to talk about something foundational: emotional patterns, trauma linked attention, rejection sensitivity, burnout cycles, the all or nothing way of functioning. These are not flies, they're signals. They're adaptive responses that your nervous system learned a long time ago, and understanding them is a superpower. As Dr. Gabor Mate explains, the mind of someone with ADHD or emotional sensitivity is not disordered. It's overstimulated, overloaded, or undersupported. In other words, the mind is responding exactly as it needs to in order to protect you. And when you shift from seeing your traits as defects to seeing them as adaptations, something opens. You begin to ask different questions. Instead of, "What's wrong with me?" you start asking, "What does my brain need?" Instead of, "Why can't I be more consistent?" you ask, "How do I design consistency that fits my wiring?" Instead of, "Why am I so sensitive?" you ask, "What wisdom is hidden inside this sensitivity?" And little by little, the shame fades, and in its place, clarity grows. This is the moment where entrepreneurship, self growth, and neurodiversity intersect, because the most powerful entrepreneurs are not the ones who are perfect. They're the ones who understand their minds, their patterns, and their energy. They're the ones who stop forcing themselves into systems that drain them, and instead they create systems around their strengths. But before we explore those strengths, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt like your brain is constantly juggling 10 ideas at once? Or like your creativity comes in sudden waves followed by total silence? Or like you can hyperfocus for hours when you're passionate, but you can't start something you don't care about, even if your life depends on it? If yes, I want you to know this. You are not lazy. You are not inconsistent. You are not flaky. Your motivation is interest based, not pressure based. This is a well documented pattern in neurodiverse cognition, especially ADHD profiles. And understanding this alone can change your life. Pausing here, because in the next section, we're going to explore how these traits translate into strengths: creativity, resilience, pattern recognition, innovation, emotional depth, and the ability to see connections others overlook. And yes, we'll talk about tools too: systems, self soothing strategies, emotional regulation, focus frameworks, and ways to build a business with the brain you already have. But before we transition, I want to invite you to be part of the conversation. If any part of this resonates, or if you want to share your own experience, leave a comment. Your story could be the message someone else needs to hear. Now, let's transition into understanding the strength that come with a neurodiverse mind and why they're often underestimated but incredibly powerful. And here's where things get interesting. Because once you start looking at neurodiverse traits through the lens of strength instead of limitation, you begin to see patterns that were always there. Patterns that quietly explain why so many entrepreneurs, creators, and innovators actually have neurodiverse wiring, even if they've never said it out loud. Let me give you a few real examples. I'm thinking of one of my close friends. She always told herself she was scattered, easily bored, and terrible with structure. But when she launched her Etsy shop, she suddenly became this unstoppable force of experimentation and creativity. She would make 10 prototypes in one night because she got an idea. She'd stay up until 2 in the morning designing new concepts, not because she had to, but because her brain was finally allowed to follow its curiosity. And one day she said something that stayed with me. She told me, I thought I was inconsistent, but maybe I was just unmotivated by things that didn't matter to me. That's a common neurodiverse truth. When the work is meaningful, the energy appears. When the work is empty, the energy collapses. It's not a flaw, it's a compass. Another friend of mine is autistic. She's brilliant, detail-oriented, and deeply intuitive, but she used to feel out of place in collaborative environments because she processed information differently. Small talk drained her, meetings overwhelmed her, but when she started freelancing, everything aligned. She built her workday around her sensory needs and communication style. She worked in focused, quiet sprints. She delivered flawless results because her mind naturally sees layers of detail most people miss. And one day she told me, I used to think I didn't belong. Now I realize I just didn't belong in the wrong environments. That sentence could be the motto for millions of neurodiverse adults trying to build a life that feels like their own. These are not exceptions. These are patterns. And if you recognize yourself in any of this, you're not imagining it. Many neurodiverse strengths come alive in entrepreneurship because entrepreneurship rewards innovation, intensity, vision, and authenticity. It rewards non-linear thinking. It rewards breaking rules. It rewards seeing connections where others see chaos. Let's talk about a few of these strengths, one by one. The first is pattern recognition. Neurodiverse minds often see links, contradictions, or opportunities before anyone else notices. This is why so many business ideas come to you in unexpected flashes. It's not random. It's your brain doing what it does best: scanning, noticing, connecting. The second strength is passion-driven focus. When something matters to you, your mind can drop into a level of focus other people find impossible. This is the famous hyperfocus state. It's not about discipline, it's about alignment, and it's one of the biggest entrepreneurial advantages you can have. The third strength is resilience. Most neurodiverse adults have spent years navigating environments that weren't designed for them, whether school, work, or social expectations. You had to figure out strategies, shortcuts, coping skills, and emotional flexibility. That's resilience. That's adaptability. Those are business assets. The fourth is creativity. Not just artistic creativity, but problem-solving creativity. Seeing unconventional solutions, building things differently, thinking in loops instead of straight lines. That's innovation. And here's something important: emotional depth. Many neurodiverse people feel deeply, notice subtle cues, or pick up shifts in energy. This doesn't make you fragile, it makes you perceptive. It makes you intuitive. It makes you able to understand your audience, your customers, your team, or even your mission on a level others can't reach. But these strengths only shine when you stop trying to operate in systems that exhaust you, when you stop punishing yourself for not being linear, when you stop forcing yourself to fit productivity models that were never meant for your brain. Let me tell you something personal to make this even clearer. Another friend, let's call him Alex, spent years feeling like he was underperforming. He was brilliant, but always overwhelmed. Meetings drained him, multitasking paralyzed him, and deadlines gave him anxiety. But when he created a project-based workflow for his own business, everything changed. He stopped working 8-hour days and shifted to 3 deep focus blocks a day. He eliminated unnecessary calls, he designed templates for repeated tasks, he built automation systems to remove decision fatigue. And suddenly, he was thriving. One day he said, maybe I wasn't bad at productivity. Maybe I just needed productivity that was designed for my type of mind. And he was right. This is why emotional growth is so essential for neurodiverse entrepreneurs. You're not just building a business. You're unlearning years of internalized pressure. You're healing from the idea that your brain should behave differently. You're stepping into your own rhythm, your own flow, your own systems. So let's talk about some emotional patterns that show up frequently. Rejection sensitivity, also known as RSD, overthinking, all or nothing thinking, procrastination that's driven by fear rather than laziness, sensory burnout, and the constant loop of overcommitting because your curiosity says yes before your energy checks in. These are not failures, these are signals. And once you understand them, they stop controlling you. Rejection sensitivity often makes you overanalyze feedback or assume the worst. But once you understand that your nervous system is protecting you from perceived threat, you can respond with self-compassion instead of self-criticism. Procrastination often isn't about avoidance. It's about emotional overload or unclear next steps. A neurodiverse friendly system breaks tasks into tiny, digestible actions. It removes ambiguity. It creates momentum. Sensory burnout isn't dramatic, it's biological. And designing your workspace around your sensory needs is not a luxury, it's a foundation. And here's the turning point. Once you stop seeing these emotional patterns as weaknesses and start interpreting them as data, your entire relationship with your mind shifts. Before we move forward, I want to quickly remind you that all the authors and books I mentioned earlier, including Dr. Edward Hallowell, Temple Grandin, Devin Price, Gabor Mate, and Jessica McCabe, are linked in the description. Buying through those links helps support the channel and allows me to keep creating these long, deep dive videos for you. Now, let's transition into something even more practical. How to build systems, routines, and emotional strategies that work with your brain instead of against it. And as we move forward, I also want to invite you once more to share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me which part of this resonates with you. Tell me what your biggest challenge is, or tell me about a strength you've started to recognize in yourself. These conversations matter, and your voice matters. Let's continue. So now that we've talked about the emotional landscape and the natural strengths that often show up in neurodiverse minds, let's shift into the part that changes everything: building systems that work for your brain instead of against it. Because once you understand how your mind actually operates, you no longer have to rely on willpower, guilt, or unrealistic expectations. You start creating frameworks that match your wiring, and suddenly the friction decreases, the overwhelm softens, the fog lifts. You stop fighting yourself and start partnering with yourself. Let's begin with the biggest shift: breaking the myth that routine equals rigidity. For many neurodiverse entrepreneurs, a routine that feels strict or repetitive creates resistance. But a routine that feels flexible with a stable structure underneath, that creates freedom. Think of it like this: you don't need a tight schedule. You need anchors, moments or behaviors that stabilize the day without suffocating it. This might be a morning reset ritual, an afternoon deep focus block, an evening reflection practice. Just 3 or 4 touch points that bring your brain back to center. One of my friends, for example, uses a startup ritual instead of a schedule. She lights a candle, reviews her task list, and chooses the top 1 or 2 items that align with her energy level for the day. That's it. No timed blocks, no strict calendar, just one moment that shifts her into intentionality. And it works beautifully because it respects her neurodiverse rhythm. Another friend uses what she calls energy-based planning. Instead of asking, "What do I have to do today?" she asks, "What type of energy do I have today? Creative, analytical, low, social, focused, restless?" And she builds her tasks around that. It sounds simple, but for a neurodiverse mind, it's life-changing. It removes shame and replaces it with strategy. This is also where sensory design comes in. Many neurodiverse adults underestimate how much their environment affects their brain. Light, noise, textures, visuals, clutter, all of these are triggers. And when your environment drains you, it's not because you're sensitive. It's because your nervous system is receiving too much input. Creating a sensory-friendly workspace is not indulgent. It's intelligent. It's efficient. It's part of emotional regulation. Let me tell you something personal. One of my friends used to think she had motivation issues. She'd sit down to work and feel instantly overwhelmed. But when she simplified her desk, added soft lighting, removed distracting colors, and used noise-blocking sound, everything changed. Her overwhelm didn't disappear, it transformed. Her brain finally had space to breathe. Another essential component is task design. Neurodiverse minds struggle with vague goals. Work on the website is too big. Write 3 bullet points for the homepage is achievable. Plan content for next month is overwhelming. Choose 2 ideas you want to explore next week is doable. This isn't about lowering standards. It's about removing ambiguity. Ambiguity is the enemy of the neurodiverse mind. Clarity is the best friend. And since we're talking about clarity, let's bring up emotional regulation. Neurodiverse entrepreneurs experience emotional intensity, fast highs, sharp lows, strong reactions, deep sensitivity. This doesn't make you unbalanced. It makes you responsive. But you need strategies to work with that intensity, not drown in it. One tool that helps is the transition pause. Before switching tasks or contexts, you take 15 seconds to breathe, unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders, and reset. This tiny reset reduces emotional overwhelm dramatically. It's like giving your nervous system a soft landing instead of a crash landing. Another tool is the emotion to action bridge. Instead of spiraling in frustration or fear, you ask yourself, what is one tiny action I can take to support myself right now? And then you do just that. Not the whole task, not the whole problem, just the next supportive action. And then there's community. Neurodiverse entrepreneurs often isolate themselves because they've been misunderstood or they struggle with inconsistency. But the truth is that community is regulation. Talking to other people who understand your brain is grounding. Sharing your challenges reduces shame. Sharing your wins creates momentum. Let me give you one more story. A friend of mine used to think she couldn't run a business because she had weeks where she felt unstoppable and weeks where everything felt heavy. But when she began talking openly to other neurodiverse entrepreneurs, she realized she wasn't failing, she was cycling. Her energy had seasons, and success didn't come from being the same every day. It came from understanding her pattern and designing around it. This is why self-growth is so connected to entrepreneurship for neurodiverse adults. You're not just building a business, you're learning who you are. You're meeting your mind for the first time without judgment. You're discovering the parts of yourself that were misinterpreted for years. And you're allowing your natural rhythm to lead instead of forcing yourself into systems that make you shrink. Before we close, I want to remind you that all the authors and books I've mentioned, Dr. Edward Hallowell, Temple Grandin, Devin Price, Gabe Ramate, Jessica McCabe, and others are linked below. But more important than any book is this. Your brain is not a problem to solve. It's an ecosystem to understand. It's a language to learn. And the moment you stop fighting your own wiring, your entire life starts shifting. Your creativity expands. Your emotional world softens. Your confidence grows. You begin to build in alignment instead of resistance. And I want you to take this with you. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not failing. You're learning how to be yourself in a world that wasn't designed for you. And that is courageous. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What part feels the most familiar? What part surprised you? What's one thing you want to try this week that supports the way your brain naturally works? Your voice matters, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for your presence, your openness, and your willingness to explore these deeper layers of self-growth. And as always, the links to the books we discussed are in the description, and buying through them helps support the channel. Let's keep growing together, one insight at a time.